The Hebrew people, they experienced the temporary forgiveness of sins by the blood of an animal sacrifice. You know, that's what we read about in the Old Testament. The sacrifice of Jesus to leave heaven and offer himself on the cross was an atoning sacrifice that is effective throughout eternity. Through Christ, we are completely redeemed from the ashes of our former life. So today, what are we talking about? I mean, we're talking about sacrifice. We're talking about sacrifice. I'm going to illustrate the idea of sacrifice with a story. It's from the trenches of World War II. There's a guy by the name of John Robert Fox. He was born in Cincinnati in May of 1915. By all accounts, he was a smart, diligent young man, and he earned a place at Wilberforce University. Here he signed up for the Reserve Officer Training Corps, meaning not only that he finished college with a graduate degree, but with a rank of second lieutenant. And when war broke out, he took his commission and joined the 92nd Infantry Division, a segregated division of African American soldiers that fought with distinction throughout the conflict. With his unit, Fox was sent to the European theater of conflict. In 1944, he found himself fighting the Nazis in Italy. And it was there where, in December of that year, he was tasked to stay behind in the small village of Somma, Tuscany. Does anybody know where that's at? Can anybody say that 4 times fast? Somma. The village had been overrun by Nazis, and Americans, they were in retreat. Fox found a house to hide in, and from the 2nd floor, he used his radio to contact his colleagues. He called for artillery fire to be directed at the village in order to give the U.S. forces time to retreat and regroup, and then relaunch a counterattack. Fox specifically ordered a barrage of fire on his exact position. Now, the gunner who received the message pointed this out to him, assuming that it must have been some kind of mistake. Fox, however, simply said, "Fire it. There's more of them than there are of us." Fox's act of sacrifice was not in vain. And as he planned, the artillery barrage did indeed give his comrades a chance to regroup and launch a successful counterattack. When the U.S. Army entered Somma, I think that's the last time I have to say that, they found Fox's body surrounded by the bodies of nearly 100 Germans. The sacrifice of John Robert Fox gave life, opportunity, and victory to his fellow soldiers in a decisive battle with the Germans. Now, the sacrifice of Christ also gives life, opportunity, and victory to all who would believe. The sacrifice of Christ is so completely sufficient that there's no need for any other work to be done. Amen? It was once for all. Hope you can see that. So Christ has now become the high priest over all the good things that have come. He has entered that greater, more perfect tabernacle in heaven, which was not made by human hands and is not part of this created world. With his own blood, not the blood of goats and calves, he entered the most holy place once for all time and secured our redemption forever. Under the old system, the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer would cleanse people's body from ceremonial impurity. Just think how much more the blood of Christ will purify our consciences from sinful deeds so that we can worship the living God. For by the power of the eternal Spirit, Christ offered himself to God as a perfect sacrifice for our sins. That came from Hebrews 9, verses 11 through 14. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that everyone sitting here, and I would say just about everyone I know, has made a sacrifice at some point in his or her life. Would you agree with that? You've made some kind of a sacrifice. Some sacrifices are bolder and bigger than others. Yet there's still sacrifices. If you talk to a World War II veteran or a Korean War veteran or any other veteran that's been involved in some kind of conflict, you might hear that person say, "Well, you don't really know what sacrifice is." But the truth is, if you've ever given up something for the good and benefit of someone else and placed their needs before your own, then you have sacrificed. I think the problem in our world today is that people are more and more putting themselves first and forgetting about the needs of other people. It's almost like we're living in a time where everyone is out for themselves. At least that's the feeling I get in the world. Everyone going out for themselves. Excuse me. Now, in week 2, we've already covered the subject of humility. So I'm not going to really belabor that point. But I do have to take a moment to recognize that where there is sacrifice, there is humility. Excuse me. Though he was God, one thing that I got going on here is this. My brain and my hand don't talk to each other sometimes. So the slides don't make it until after I've already done it. But though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on a cross. Philippians 2, 6 through 8. Now, don't you think that Jesus could have just said, "Hey, I'm God. You do what I want you to do. I do what I want to do." You think he could have been like that? You think he could have had that kind of attitude? Well, yeah, he could have, but he didn't. You see, Christ willingly gave up heaven to come to earth as a sacrifice for our sin. He didn't hold on to his position and power, but instead he laid it all down to be a humble servant and give up his life on the cross. And are we thankful that he did that? Yes, we are. He knew in order to rescue the world from the curse of sin, it would cost him his life. If you're gonna follow in the footsteps of Jesus, which is what it means to be a disciple, following in the footsteps of Jesus, then you're going to experience sacrifice. Thankfully, Jesus is very straightforward about this, and he tells us this in his Gospels. And so today's passage is Luke 14, 25 through 33. And it's the cost of being a disciple. A large crowd was following Jesus. He turned around and said to them, "If you want to be my disciple, you must by comparison hate everyone else. Your father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even your own life. However, otherwise you cannot be my disciple. Now, the phrase comparison, the phrase by comparison, doesn't appear in the Greek, but it accurately represents Jesus' meaning. For love for family and one's own life must not compete with devotion to Christ. Following Jesus has to come first in our priorities. It has to come first. Now, this may be a hard truth to swallow, but Jesus comes first. Can I say that again? Jesus comes first. Our devotion must be to Him above all else. Your family, your friends, your siblings, your parents, and even yourself will lead you down a path that does not lead to righteousness. People will fail you, but Jesus will never fail you. Jesus has to come at the top of our priority list, and only then can we be a disciple. This is a sad but a true story. And over the years, we've made trips to visit my family in the Midwest. Oh, did I say St. Louis? Oh, anyway, for some reason in my sermons, St. Louis always comes up. I don't know why. Now, when the kids were little, all the kids are grown now, but when the kids were little, I used to like to gather them all when we were all together, gather them all and sit them down in the living room, and I would pull out my Bible and I would read the Christmas story to them. And I really loved doing it. I had a couple of other motives behind it too. I wanted them to hear it. I wanted the children to hear it for sure. I wanted them to know the truth, so it's just not a Santa Claus life. And I also wanted the adults to hear it. So I knew that when I was reading to those children, I was reading to those adults too. And so I loved doing it, but you know what? Every time it came time to do that, I could feel tension. I could feel the tension from my family. Sometimes an eye would roll, or sometimes somebody would just walk away. That's tension. And just even the simple act of pulling out a Bible and reading a story to the kids sent a message that Jesus is top priority. Is that a picture of sacrifice? Yeah, it is. Not in the way you would think, but you're sacrificing your priority list. You're not putting your parents first or your kids. You're putting Jesus at the top of that list. And if you do not carry your own cross, verse 27. And if you do not carry your own cross and follow me, you cannot be my disciple. To take up the cross meant to carry one's own cross to the place of crucifixion. Many Galileans had been killed that way by the Romans, and Jesus was going to face this as well. Now, with this word picture, Christ presented a clear and challenging description of the Christian life. Being His disciple meant setting aside our selfish desires, shouldering one's cross every day, and following Him. It seems so simple, yet it is so demanding. So simple, yet so demanding. For the original 12, what did that mean? It meant literal suffering and death. For believers today, it means the understanding that we belong to Him and that we live for His purposes. Yeah, we need to understand that we belong to the Lord. And we need to understand that we should be standing up for what we believe in. We should be carrying the cross everywhere we go and following Him, following in His footsteps. Consider this. You think of your relationship with God as primarily something in terms of what's in it for you? Or do you think about it in terms of what you can do for Him? Admittingly, when I was a young Christian, I didn't have a grasp of that concept yet. I can remember when I was at my first church and started serving within the church. I was posted as a greeter on a door. And sometimes I would get posted on a door that was on a part of the building that no one could see. The door no one ever went through, but yet they wanted somebody posted there, just in case somebody decided to go in it. And I can remember standing there saying, why am I here? I remember asking this to the person that was in charge. Why are you putting me on this door? What's the purpose? Nobody sees me. Nobody appreciates me. I don't ever get a thank you. And then she so graciously asked me a question. She said, who are you doing this for? She said, are you doing it for God, or are you trying to glorify God, or are you just doing this for yourself? Are you serving yourself here? Is this for your attention, or is this for His glory? After that conversation, I shut my mouth, and my life was changed. I didn't care where they put me after that. It was all for God. It's all for what's in it for Him, not for me. Putting aside your selfish desires, denying yourself, taking up your cross daily, and following Him. Anything less is not discipleship. It's merely superficial lip service. That's what it is. Anything less. But don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there is enough money to finish it? Otherwise, you might complete only the foundation before running out of money, and then everyone would laugh at you. They would say, there's the person who started that building and couldn't afford to finish it. Or what king would... Do I need to turn it? Okay. Or what king would go to war against another king without first sitting down with his counselors to discuss whether his army of 10,000 could defeat the 20,000 soldiers marching against him? And if he can't, he will send a delegation to discuss terms of peace while the enemy is still far away. When a builder doesn't count the cost or estimates inaccurately, the building may be left uncompleted. Now, anyone that knows me knows that I'm from St. Louis, and I love the St. Louis area. I always talk about the Arch, talk about the St. Louis Cardinals, White Castle, yeah, okay. But imagine what it would have been like back in 1965, okay? And they're building the Arch. That's the year they completed it. They're building the Arch. Finally get to a point where they're getting ready to put that last piece in at the top. And all of a sudden, they run out of money in their budget. They run out of materials. Nobody can get this together. They couldn't finish the project. No longer would we have the world's greatest monument, but we would just have an uncompleted structure. And so, thankfully, they planned it out. They planned the cost of that. They planned the materials ahead of time, and they were able to complete that job. Now, let me ask you this. Will you abandon the Christian life after just a little while because you didn't count the cost of what it means to be committed to Jesus? What are these costs? Christians may face the loss of social status or wealth. They may give up control of their money or their time or their career. They may be hated or separated from their family or even put to death. Following Christ doesn't mean a trouble-free life. You can read that anywhere in the Bible. It doesn't mean a trouble-free life. We must carefully count the cost of becoming Christ's disciples so that we will firmly hold on to our faith and won't be tempted to turn back later. Excuse me. There's people in my circle of influence that have received lies from people in church before, saying that if you come to church, all your troubles are going to disappear. You come to church, your money troubles are gone. You come to church, the drug addiction's gone, out of here. And when that didn't come to pass, they left the church, never to come back, and they're still angry. They're still angry that they were lied to. I know people that have been mocked and ridiculed for following Jesus. You know anybody? When it was too crazy for them, especially when it was coming from their own family members, they walked away from the faith because they wanted to please their family more than pleasing Jesus. The new Christian needs to know that there is going to be a cost for following Jesus. Sacrifice will have to be made to follow Jesus. It's not going to be easy. But young Christian, hear me when I say it. It will be worth it. It will be worth it. So you cannot be my disciple without giving up everything you own. To become Jesus' disciple, you have to make major changes in your thinking and in your lifestyle. Everything you own belongs to God. Everything you own belongs to God. Before coming to Jesus, people don't realize that. They don't realize that everything they have belongs to God. Are you willing to change your values in order to know Christ better? Will you fix or rearrange your crowded, busy schedule to set aside a few minutes each day for some Bible study and prayer? Will you change some of your plans and your goals and desires to conform to what you learn about Christ? When we read the Bible, we're supposed to listen to it and obey it, and let our hearts and our lives be transformed by it. Whatever you must change or give up, having Christ and becoming one with Him will be more than worth the sacrifice. I can almost guarantee you've heard this verse from Galatians before, simply because it so succinctly describes our position with Christ and our engagement to the world around us. My old self has been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. So I live in this earthly body by trusting in the Son of God who loved me and gave Himself for me. Galatians 2:20. So, yes, discipleship and sacrifice can be difficult. It's not always going to be a bed of roses, is it? But you know what? Jesus promised that He will always be there with you. He will help you. He will walk with you through the fire. Think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Great story. Jesus will walk through the fire with you. He will walk through the storm with you. Yes, you have to be willing to let go of everything you once believed to be so incredibly important. Now, what was that? I don't know. Each person has their own list of things that are so incredibly important. But you have to be willing to let go. Yes, there will be opposition. When you're a Christ follower, you're going to feel the opposition at some point. There's going to be someone who just kind of turns their back on you. And that's okay, because you're glorifying Christ. And yes, God will be with you always. In fact, He lives with you, empowering you to live the life of faith. So as hard as it is to let go of things and make the sacrifices, don't forget that He's with you, and He is our perfect high priest. So then, since we have a great high priest who has entered heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, Let us hold firmly to what we believe. This high priest of ours understands our weaknesses, for he faced all of the same testings we do, yet he did not sin. So let us come boldly to the throne of our gracious God. There we will receive his mercy, and we will find grace to help us when we need it most. Hebrews 4:15 and 16. Sacrifice takes courage, conviction, and confidence, but it's worth it. Be encouraged. I'm almost done, by the way. Wait a minute. I'm looking at my watch. That really means nothing. Be encouraged. Don't throw off the past sin and shame that so easily entangles you, okay? Run the race that's set out before you. Look into Jesus, pioneer and a perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. Jesus sacrificed his life for the joy set out before him. And let me tell you today, there is a very real, deep, abiding joy in serving others and sacrificing life for someone else. Think about the last time that you went out on a service project. You sacrificed time and energy and money to serve and be a blessing to someone else. And you know what? I bet it felt amazing. I bet you walked away with an experience of fullness that was different from anything you felt before. And God, he works in some crazy good ways. We used to go to our sister church in the downtown Raleigh area, in the inner city area. And we would go down there on Sundays. And while they were having their service, we would set up tables. And we would bring food. And after their service was over with, they would come out of their service and everyone could pass through the line and have some food, have a meal. And so the first time I did this, I thought I was going down there to change some lives. I thought I was going to change some hearts. But little did I know, Jesus was already there waiting for me to change my heart. That very first time, I was humbled in such a way that he brought me to my knees. So with sacrifice, there is humility. When we trade our selfish desires and wants for a life of discipleship and serving others, the sacrifices we make have meaning and purpose. They have names and faces attached to them. When we serve others, we can see our selfless impact. Without the sacrifice of Christ, there's no redemption. And without the sacrifice of the saints who've gone before us, there's no church. And in closing, I want to say this. Sacrifice is powerful. Amen? It can change the outcome of a battle. Like the story I shared at the beginning of the sermon. It can change someone's life who needs help. And it can redeem someone's eternity. Think about that for a moment. No matter how hard life has been, no matter how far from God you may feel today, no matter how irredeemable you believe your life to be, the sacrifice of Christ was completely sufficient. And today is as good a day as any to rise above the sin and shame and accept the gift that God has given you through His Son. Amen?